I'm sorry I didn't.
If commissioners could just take their seats, I think we do have quorum. And I'll call meeting 2010 of the Toronto Transit Commission to order. Any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? There appear to be none. We this morning moved the minutes of the previous meeting. Before we begin, I'd actually just ask that in a moment we stand for, if you're able, for a moment of silence as we remember our colleague, Councillor Ron Moser, who passed away this week. Councillor Moser was a longtime member of Toronto Council and a councillor for the former city of Scarborough, having first been elected to office in 1988. Councillor Moser was also a member of the Toronto Transit Commission Board from January 2009 to December 2010. He'll be greatly missed by those of us in this chamber and by the residents of Scarborough who he served for so many years. Our thoughts today are with Ron's wife Heather and their family. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to just move through the agenda to see what items we can hold or move forward with. I will hold the item number 1, which is the CEO's report, and number 2, which are the ACAT minutes. Item number 3. Does anyone want to hold that, or can we move the staff recommendation? Staff recommendation moved by Commissioner Byers. All in favor? No opposed. That carries. Item number 4. Could we have someone move the actions taken in Committee of the Whole? Moved by Commissioner Mihevc. All in favor? No opposed. That carries. I think we're going to hold. Should we hold item number 5? Commissioner Mihevc, you can ask that question that you wanted to ask. Item number 6, Sherburne Station Easier Access Phase 3 property acquisition. A motion to adopt actions taken in camera by Commissioner Fragadakis. All in favor? That carries. Item number 7, procurement authorization for SRT vehicle structural repairs. Someone like to move the staff recommendation? Moved by Commissioner De Laurentiis. All in favor? That carries. Item number 8, we have a deputant, so we'll hold that. Number 9, if I could move that we waive, we've got a late request to have a deputant on this item, and if we could just move that Emily Day could be added to that list. I'll move that motion. All in favor? That carries, so we'll hold 9 for that. Item number 10, held by Commissioner Mihevc, and item number 11, held by Vice Chair Heisey. So that leaves us with items number 1, 2, 5, 8, 9, 10, and 11. We'll start with item number 1 for the CEO's report, and I'll hand it over to our CEO just for some introductory comments, and then we can move to questions of staff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I'd like to spend just a little bit of time with my comments on the CEO's report, and I'm also going to ask a couple of my team to make brief presentations and give comments as well, because there's quite a lot, I think, in here of both interest and things that we'd like to update you on. But first of all, just a couple of personnel-related matters. I'm very pleased to announce publicly that Mike Palmer, who was our acting Chief Operating Officer, has been confirmed into the position of Chief Operating Officer. Well done, Mike. And sitting to his left, his right and his left for people behind, Jim was covering the what was Mike's previous substantive post, Deputy Chief Operating Officer. Jim has done a stellar job covering Deputy. We've formally confirmed him as Deputy Chief Operating Officer now, and with that, just as we did with Kirsten, Jim Ross joins the TTC Executive, which I'd just like to point out, Jim joined this company as a subway operator, and he's made it all the way up to Executive. I'm really proud of you, Jim. And then finally, the final staff note is that to my right, the legend that is Vince Roeder. Vince has announced his retirement after nearly just shy of 34 years serving this company, this city, and its customers. Vince has done just about every job going in the Commission in the field of finance, administration, Commission services. I think his record and his reputation speak for themselves. I know, as someone who came to this city 5 years ago and came into this job with practically no notice, I literally, Vince, could not have done this job without you, without your counsel and your wisdom, your friendship and your support. You will be hugely missed by this company. I know you're going to spend a couple more months with us yet, but I think you've just been an outstanding servant of the TTC and of Toronto. Oh, look, a standing ovation.
We've got him for a while. He's going to work on a speech.
He'll be back. He'll be at a couple more meetings, I think. Okay, so on to a couple more things. And again, thanks for your indulgence. There's just a few things I'd like to update you on. We won't be receiving awards today, but I was delighted to find that Sharon and Ian from our comms team, customer communications team, just let me know that we've received some more awards. And this time, this is in the field of branding and also some of our marketing campaigns that we do. So we've received 2 further North American awards for branding and for our We Move You campaign, which was the ballet campaign that we did in conjunction with the National Ballet of Canada. I think I got that right. And also 2 national awards, kind of in that same vein, branding and the We Move You campaign. And fifthly, so 5 awards in total, a design award for the refurb that we did, or the branding we did of Honest Ed's at Bathurst Station. So people really are beginning to appreciate the work that we do. And Sharon, I think you and your team have done a stellar job actually in the rebranding and the new look at the TTC, which is a key part of the modernisation that we've got underway. So the specifics that I wanted to talk to were, number 1, performance. I'm then going to talk about ridership and tax credit. 3, I'll update you on our mega projects. 4, I'll talk about streetcar deployment, and I think that will probably suffice for today. And I'm doing them in the order in which these appear in my commentary. And I'll stop at particular moments to invite colleagues to add a few words. So with performance, you've got the scorecard in front of you. I have mentioned this in my commentary. Remember, please, that the scorecard for Subway is still the Q4 statistics. So it's the exact same statistics as what you saw last quarter, although those will be updated for Q1 in due course. So one of the things we've been discussing amongst ourselves as a team is, should we move to make them periodic, in other words, every 4 weeks, because that then gives you more granular detail. Now, at the last board meeting, Rick, the Chief Service Officer, gave us a sort of deeper dive into surface transit. So I have asked Mike to please just give you an up-to-date briefing on how performance is currently on the subway, mindful that those were the Q4 stats. And I particularly asked Mike to highlight to you the progress we're making against the target that I set the team of a 50% reduction in delay incidents and delay minutes over 5 years from a 2014 base. So Mike, if you'd just like to comment and use your slides, please, on subway performance.
Thanks, Andy. So this is a coup and decoup joint effort. In 2015, Andy and Gary, the then COO, set me the target of reducing subway delays counted in minutes and incidents by 50% over 5 years. So we're now in our 3rd year. 2014 was the baseline. And what I wanted to show you, because the commentary that Andy refers to is last October to December, so it's already 4 months out of date. This is comparing Q1 of 2014 versus Q1 of 2017, so the first 3 periods. So in the first 3 months of 2014, there were 5,068 incidents. In the same quarter this year, we only had 4,176. That's 892 fewer incidents on the 4 lines. That's a 17.6 reduction. So in our 3rd year, just to see how we were doing, we would be looking at around a 30%. In terms of the minutes, in the first quarter of 2014, we had 12,628 minutes. The first quarter of this year, 7,863. That's 4,765 fewer minutes of delay. That is a 37% reduction if you were a customer in the first 3 months of 2017 versus 2014. I've then taken the minutes in the instance and divided the minutes by the instance. So the average delay in the first 3 months of 2014 was 2.49 minutes. That's a decimal minute, not a 49 seconds. And in 2017, it's 1.88 minutes. So the average delay's gone down. So what this looks like, the yellow line is 2014, and you can see 2017, and you can see the gap in incidents on all lines, and I'm going to drill down slightly and show you the winners and losers in a sec. In terms of minutes, the gulf is way more stark. There is a cycle. We have been blessed this last winter with a mild winter. The winter of 2013-14, just before my arrival, was very bad, but you can see the progress we're making, and you can see how in a year the figures do go up and down based on good weather, bad weather, hot cars, plan Bs and so on. In terms of the results by line, the 2 heroes really are line 1, Young University. The number of incidents is down from 2,454 to 1,727. That's a 29% reduction in incidents in the first 3 months of this year compared to 14's baseline. And the minutes is down from 4,992 to 2,898. That's a 41.9% reduction. If you're a customer on YU in these last 3 months, you would have experienced 41% fewer minutes of delay. On BD, it's more modest, which is partly to do with the age of the rolling stock, but we've had some problems in the open sections, particularly with signalling. We only went down 3 incidents year on year, which is rounded up to 0.1%. But the minutes go down, and for some reason 3 digits have been taken off there. but the minutes are down 41.9%. We'll just get you the minutes for that. On SRT, which I'm particularly thrilled about because some people see it as a problem child unfairly, in the first 3 months of 2014, the incidents have gone down over 3 years from 354 to 160. That is a 54% reduction in the number of incidents. To be fair, that's slightly skewed by a very poor winter in 13-14, and you'll know that SRT is particularly vulnerable to snow. What's the figure?
I don't know.
Okay. And for minutes, it's gone down from 2928 to 610. That's to say, customers on the first 3 months of this year would have noticed almost 80% fewer minutes of delay than the same time in 2014. Shepherd is a little curious. The number of incidents has gone up, 22%, but the number of minutes has gone down. And this is really the opto-related incidents as the new tractor train beds in. They're nuisance delays, so they don't cost us many minutes. We have had 2 big signal failures, one at Don Mills and one at Bayview, which slightly distort the figures. But I think this is statistically not significant, and by the end of this year, that 22% increase will drop back into a positive figure. We've just broken down by the 3 main areas on the delays. So subway infrastructure, the number of instances down 6.9%. The figures are there. The number of minutes has dropped from 1823 to 1024. That's a 43% reduction in infrastructure delays between Q1 2014 and Q1 2017. For subway transportation, which is the right-hand graph there, the number of incidents has gone down 34.9%. So this is driver shortage, driver error, stuff that we will put down to the subway transportation crews and so on. The minutes is down from 1372 to 948. That's a 30% reduction within subway transportation. And the real hero for us is rail cars and shops. The incidents have gone down from 503 to 322 for the first quarter of this year, or 36%. And the minutes have gone down from 2236 to 1235. That's almost 45% reduction. The real hero in this is probably the Toronto Rocket. The 87th rocket has arrived. It's under test at the moment. But at the moment, the mean time between service-affecting failures for the Toronto Rocket is at an all-time high. And I'm just looking for the figure for you. 744,000 kilometres between service-affecting failures, and we define that as, I think it's over 5 minutes. Our target is 600,000. We are approaching world-class performance on the Toronto Rocket. It is our most successful train, and we're absolutely thrilled of its performance. Slight downside, and this came out in an article last week on CBC, is other sources of delays. So again, comparing the first quarters of 2014 and 2017, the number of trespassers at track level in terms of minutes has gone up 280% to pretty much 500 minutes in the first 3 months of this year of unauthorised people at track level. The number of assault minutes, this is where people get assaulted on trains, operate the emergency alarm, and we provide assistance, is up 207% from 89 minutes up to 246. On the better side, the milder winters help, but the number of incidents has dropped 56%, and the number of minutes for things like weather third party, so that might include a pile coming in at Dundas West, or something happening at street level, or an incident of property, have gone down 87%. That's just a quick headline. I can process these figures any way you like, so if individual commissioners want to know about their area, we can carve this up by line, say, against rolling stock, as Councillor Fradger-Darkis has asked before. But this is a really good start to this year. and it shows that we're well on target to be at 30% fewer delays and fewer minutes of delay by the end of this year. Did we get the figure? Sorry, can I just ask, Jim,
That's the number.
yeah, Kevin, could you just go back to the slide where the digits were missing?
It's not even close. It's not just a few digits. The whole line is wrong.
Okay, the next one. Can you go down a page? We will correct the slides for the record, but the number of minutes delay was 4132 from 3728. So it's actually a change of 9.8%. But what we do is to update the slides so you have an accurate reflection. My apologies, but that's crept out.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So we just wanted to do that because then you've got up-to-date data. But I'm just going to make a couple more points. I mean, Mike rightly cited the performance of the Toronto rocket as one of the drivers. But I'd like to impress upon commissioners, please, this is reflective of the work we've been doing over the last 5 years to just relentlessly identify and mitigate and drive down the root causes of delay. So getting back on top of state of good repair and being proactive in our maintenance regime rather than reactive, tackling things, other causes of delay, things like Plan Bs, which are track fires, so reducing the fire load, getting rid of garbage, tidying up the actual track environment so that you incur less failures, changing some of the equipment that we use at track level to provide inherently more modern and more reliable infrastructure. He's not here, but were he here, Craig Harper, who's our, again, comparatively new, we brought him in from Calgary, head of infrastructure, I think, again, has done a stellar job because he's brought a real methodology and rigor and science to how we address problems that have dogged us for years. So you can expect more of that to come. And that's the unsexy stuff, to use a chair phrase, in addition to the mega projects that we often talk about. So I'll just finish off other points I'd just like to highlight, and then obviously it's your opportunity to ask questions. Second item, ridership and tax credit. Ridership for April, we're only, two-thirds of the way through the month, but so far in April we are actually on target, on budget for our ridership. Just one other thing that struck me looking through the statistics in my prep for the meeting, Wheel-Trans, which we've regularly said has exceeded budget. We're not quite at budget. We predicted this year we'd have a 20% increase in Wheel-Trans ridership. It's actually 18% increase, so Wheel-Trans still really seeing exponential growth. Of course, the big issue that's come up in the last 4 weeks is the elimination that the Feds announced of PTTC, the tax credit, and there's a full analysis for you there on section 3.5. Doubtless you'll have some questions. What I would say is this is our early analysis without the benefit of knowing who claims that tax credit, because obviously that's data that the CRA have and we don't have access to that, but we are going to conduct a survey in the spring to find out who does take advantage of it, and then we can firm up a bit more on what we think the likely impact would be. Just a final few things. Number 3, and I know Commissioner Mahevic's going to have a question on this, but mega projects, TYSSE, I'm really pleased to say we've now achieved substantial performance on 3 of the stations. So that's Downsview Park, York University and Vaughan Metropolitan Centre are basically complete. We've got the power on, which we said we'd have on by the end of March, and we duly did. We've been running test trains. I'll let the Commissioner ask the question when he's ready. Just a little advert. On May the 27th, we will be participating in Doors Open, and we will make available to the public, give access to the public areas, not behind the scenes, but the public areas of Downsview Park and York University. We're also, related to the TYSSE, going to change the name of Downsview Park on the 7th of May. And the reason we have to, Downsview, the reason we have to change Downsview is because if you remember, the first station on TYSSE is more accurately called Downsview Park because it's in the park. So Downsview will change to Shepherd West from May the 7th in a phased approach. Item number 4, you'll doubtless have some questions for us about streetcar deployment. We've had a revisit of the streetcar deployment. We think it makes sense to make St. Clair the 4th streetcar route to accept and be equipped with new streetcars, and that will start in September of this month and will complete by February. And we're also going to move up King, the 504, from where it was in the order. We'll now start equipping King in weekdays from November through to July of next year. And then the final thing I just wanted to flag, because again, it's kind of breaking news in terms of performance. Commissioners have rightly challenged us before on staff attendance rates, because that was adverse to trend. For the 3rd period in a row, it's not reflected in the data, but period 3 data shows a further reduction in staff non-attendance. With our focus that we're applying, we're now down to 6.89%. So we're going to keep the pressure on that. And thank you, Chair, for your indulgence.
Great, thank you very much. Questions from Commissioners Byers, De Laurentiis, Heisey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the reports. Couple questions for me. Firstly, on the streetcar deployment, I did have a question about St. Clair versus 504, and you've addressed that. But can you give us an update? You've got the the delivery schedule there. The numbers obviously ramp up beginning next month. You still confident that that we're on track, so to speak, for Bombardier really delivering bigger numbers of cars starting fairly shortly?
I am. I mean, Rick may wish to comment. I have no reason to believe that Bombardier will not stick to this schedule. Rick, perhaps you'd like to comment?
Through you, Chair. Yes, I had a discussion earlier this week with a number of the Bombardier staff. So my concern all along is waiting to get to May when we have the 3 coming. And as of right now, they are lined up to come on schedule, as well as June. So it looks like everything's lining up very nicely.
Thank you. Page 26, you mentioned Presto and the improvement in the failure rate. Can you give us, I don't know whether Chris is here, but any update for us on how Presto is working? Obviously, the numbers are ramping up, and sense of how the failure rate is going, enforcement. I know we'll be talking about that later generally, but anything to share on Presto at this point?
It's better. I mean, neither Chris nor Bob Hughes could make it here today, so I'll take that question. I mean, we, as we have previously done, we continue to meet with Presto every 4 weeks at CEO level and at deputy level. We are also doing some work to ourselves, go around. Rick's equipped a bunch of his people, about 100 people, correct, with Presto cards. So we're doing our own checks at start of traffic, in other words, before the vehicles come out of the garage. And the non-availability rate of the readers is markedly improved. The add value machines, which are the green machines that we've got in some, not yet all of our stations, is again markedly improved with the software changes that Presto Metrolinx have made. And we've also been doing some work with Scheidt and Bachmann, who are the suppliers of our gates, because the gates we look after, and with a few things still to do, gate performance has improved. So I wouldn't say we're out of the woods yet. We've still got some improvement to make, but we're definitely on the right trajectory to getting this thing working properly. Excellent.
Thank you. Page 38, there's a chart there on short terms for buses. I think the same profile applies to streetcars. Unless I get that wrong, the budget for short turns actually increases this year, if that's correct, or the target. I was confused by that. Am I correct in that, and why is that, if that is the case?
Through you, Mr. Chair, let me just put the chart up for you so you can get a good look at both bus and streetcar. So the target for this year, well, let me step back. When we started tracking this in 14, 15, and 16, we were setting targets for ourselves of 50% of the previous year. And then after last year, we realized, and if you can see at the very end on the right side of the slide, we started merging. So then we had a discussion about what would our goal be for 2017. So the goal for 2017 is to attempt to do better than 2016. It's not to do another 50%, because we'd have red X's the entire year. And as you can see on the left-hand side, the green, where we're trending right now. If you could flip one more for me as well. On streetcar, very similar. So we're doing very well. Now, the importance of the short turns, as I've said before, is to really make sure that we track the total length of the trip from A to Z. And if you could flip to the next chart, for instance. Oh, I'm sorry, go back. So the on-time performances, we track it. For instance, there's the on-time performance for streetcars. So as we've made terrific strides in reducing the short turns, taking the vehicles from A to Z, we can actually do the real travel times. And you can see over the last 3 years, we've made significant improvement over the reliability of the vehicles leaving as per the advertised schedule from the end of the line. In another year or two, we'll be right where we want to be in the 90% range on both bus and streetcar.
Great. And last one quickly, the CBC story that came out, did you see any, I mean, in a way, it's potentially a benefit to having customers aware that many of the problems on the line, we're causing ourselves, we broadly as customers. Any kind of feedback from that? Are you able to do something with that to alert people that, be careful, be wise, be thoughtful if you can?
Very timely question. Incidentally, I've just been reminded of what the latest Presto stats are on the readers on vehicles, 98.5%. That's from an audit that we did. We are indeed, we're not being passive to this increase in customer-caused delays. And I'll ask Sharon, who's our head of customer comms, to talk to a campaign we're about to hit the streets with.
Sure. So we will be launching on May 1st a new campaign that will address a lot of the kinds of behaviors that either cause us delays or also cause annoyances for other customers. And I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised with the campaign. It's really giving a voice to our customers themselves and the things that that bother them and that customers can also play a part in addressing.
Great. Commissioner De Laurentiis with questions.
Thank you. At page 11, Andy, I just really had a question. Under financials, the second paragraph, the first sentence. So perhaps you can just unpack that for me. It's saying that at the end of February, 1.7 million, we were 1.7 million below budget and 0.7 million below the 2016 comparable actual. So that's, should that be concerning to us?
So maybe I'll take that question. So anytime we're not right on target or better than target for ridership, it is always a concern for us because ridership is probably 95% of our revenues. But if you look at where we were compared to last year, for example, you see, gee, we're below last year, but almost all that would flow through to the school break. This year was 2 weeks in 2017. In 2016, it was the last week, and it was 1 week. So that extra week lost us probably a million, maybe 1.5 million rides, not just from a week's worth of ridership, but also anybody who was buying a MetroPass in January. A lot of people didn't buy a MetroPass because you only got 2 weeks worth of it instead of the normal 3 or 4 weeks. So it's not a good trend. It's not one we like. We're off to a slow start. But as Andy said, so far, I'll cross my fingers as I always do, April, we are right on target. So with any luck, this is, something that's easing its way out. So yes, we should always be concerned, and we are concerned. It's still early in the year. It's not where we want to be, but a lot of it's explainable. The bigger issue is, or perhaps the bigger issue for us is, what happens with the tax credit for later in the year. And the other thing is, it's probably now about the 3rd or 4th year where our ridership in total has been, fairly, I won't say flat or level, but it hasn't grown a lot. We probably had about 15 years where we routinely grew by 2 or 3% a year, and in the last 3 or 4 years, we've down to about 1% a year. So it's not, in the long term, when you think about where we're going in the current year, it's a concern. You'll see later on in the report, we have enough expenditure reductions that we've already identified to offset the projected loss in ridership. If the January-February trend continued, that would be really problematic. It looks like it may be over, and we'll have to figure out what happens with the tax credit later on. And as Andy said, we have some idea. We can do some formulaic calculations of what that might mean for us, but we really don't know till we start seeing the sales come in. Are people more persuaded by the face price of the pass, or are they sitting there doing the face price calculation, calculating their tax credit, and doing that? I would, but I'm an accountant. How many other people are doing that? I don't know. So we're going to, as we say, we got some questions out there now to our customers to ask them, specifically ask them about the impact of that tax credit. And we'll be reporting that, the results, that stuff back to the board in July. And by then, we probably even will have some impact, we'll have some visibility on July MetroPass sales. So we'll kind of cross our fingers and hope that that doesn't turn out to be a real big thing for us. But I will say, half of our ridership is on monthly passes. So even a small change could be a relatively big number for us.
Other questions? Okay. Vice Chair Heisey, then Commissioner Fragadakis, and Commissioner Mihevik.
So on employee absence, I was wondering, in most of the organizations I've dealt with, it's usually one element of the organization that has a bigger problem than others. So we have a 7.38%, it's gone down, absenteeism rate, you told 6.9 something. So what are our problem spots, the divisions that are creating the vacancies, and what are the percentages there? Because I presume we have some divisions where there's very low absenteeism rates and others where there's higher.
Well, absolutely. And there's always a number of factors. So if, for example, typically shift workers tend to have, it's not unique to the TTC, it's not unique to transit. Shift workers will tend to have a slightly higher level of non-attendance absence, if you like, than, say, office workers, because it's just the nature of the job, the impact of shifts on you, the exposure to, the colds, common colds, and working out in the public arena. But secondly, another factor is we have an aging workforce to a certain extent, so some divisions have a higher age profile than others, and so therefore you're more likely to have a higher absence rate at those locations, sometimes offset by the fact that in those divisions you've got people who've got more longer length of service, and some of the newer people coming in maybe don't yet have the work ethic that we would want them to have. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. Every month we have an executive meeting that reviews, a people executive which I chair. We go through in granular detail which areas are ahead of target, which areas are under target, and we are providing additional assistance to those line managers who have particularly problematic areas to manage.
Okay, so maybe it would be of assistance the board wants to get some more granular detail so we'd understand the degree of the problem in specific departments versus other departments so we can measure it. I don't think we've ever asked for that before, and it might be useful. Sure. We don't need it today.
I mean, we typically present you with outputs rather than inputs because as a board you would want to hold us to account at the highest level. But if that's your desire, we can provide that.
Well, why don't you give it to me, and if I think it's of interest, we can
Sure, I can give you that, absolutely. But the good news is, because we're putting relentless focus on this, and as I said, we're now on a clearly improving trend 3 periods in a row.
Okay, next question. Page 46, bus mean distance between failure. I hope this isn't the case, but I know that we directed, as a result of the Auditor General report, a review of the maintenance schedules for buses, the regular maintenance schedules, and we increased the kilometers between regular maintenance, and I wondered if there was any suggestion of a connection that's disclosing itself to mean distance between failures and any change in the maintenance schedule that we directed. I hope not. But it just occurred to me it's something that we should keep track of.
Rick's shaking his hand. I don't believe that's the case. I think this is an output. It's a shame Rich isn't here, who was until recently the head of bus maintenance. This is again relentless attention to detail on bus maintenance, and particularly with, for example, Wheel-Trans. We've done some work to stop what was a chronic problem with torque pressures on the axles.
So, I mean, if you look at that graph on the left side, you see that's a pretty remarkable improvement.
It is.
So it's great. And some of that's all the very things we talked about. There are some other more practical things. I mean, this, almost, go back to last August, for example, a fair chunk of that was the hybrid components on our buses were dying. So we've negotiated a new contract and extended that and getting a much better supply of hybrid parts. And even the servers on the cameras on the buses, they were breaking down, and we found a way to sort of source those from another location. So it's a combination of a whole bunch of things, but, this is really good, And as we feed in more of those brand-new buses that we're ordering, you can expect us to get significantly better as we're getting rid of the worst buses we have out
Let me
there.
just add one more point, because to remind you, Councillor, sometime a while ago, we asked for, or we pitched what we thought might be contentious at the time. We said we would actually like to take 7 buses per garage off the road in order to finally give mechanics the time they really need to keep our bus fleet reliable, because it's kind of to our credit that we were just pushing buses out in order to make service. But the trouble is, it's kind of false economy. If that bus then within 20 minutes breaks down and sits at the side of the road, how does that help the customer? So we've partially reduced service by taking buses out of service in order to give mechanics more time, quality time, to actually attend to the failures they know that need to be fixed. We've improved the amount of spare parts held at divisions in garages, and this is now having this material effect, which really means that buses are staying on the road longer. So that's a clearly demonstrable customer benefit.
When will we get a follow-up on the implementation of the new maintenance schedule, how that's worked out?
Rick, I'd have to ask you to answer that, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can prepare something in the coming months. One of the key factors to having the success of this program is when you permitted us to have a spare ratio that was appropriate to the industry, and it allowed us to keep the vehicles in the garage and work on them. At any one time, about 10% of your fleet should be up in the air having preventive maintenance. As you recall, Rich Wong, when he gave a presentation a year or so ago, talked about the fact that about 80% of his work was corrective maintenance as opposed to preventive maintenance, and having that spare ratio has allowed us to shift that and get the successes we have now. What we do is we tell people that major maintenance intervals are at every 10,000 kilometers. So anywhere in your fleet, if you're having breakdowns less than 10,000 kilometers, it's a reflection on your maintenance practice. Right now, we've exceeded that, and we're going to keep it in that standard.
One last question for Mr. Palmer. Mike, when we get the ATC installed, so you're aiming for 50% improvement over that 5-year period, and that's without the benefit of ATC. What can we expect ATC will deliver over and above that? Or is it not directly related?
It is directly related, Commissioner, probably not to the extent you think, because we're still going to run the same trains with the same crews and the same customers over the same stations, notwithstanding TYSSC. The amount of ATC equipment trackside is way less, so we won't be maintaining insulated joints, train stops. There's only signals protecting interlockings. Signals have made a big improvement over last year. We're moving to a reliably centered maintenance activity, so we're replacing train stops before they fail. We're replacing relays before they fail. But the whole amount of wayside equipment will be far less than there is today. But the other thing about the maintenance, it's just a different generation of maintenance. It's a bit like a new car. You'll be plugging in a laptop to work out what went wrong, rather than going trackside to check relays. I would expect on my US in 2019, when we're end-to-end ATC, to see at least a 50% reduction in minutes and incidents attributed to signalling. The only downside of new signalling, just as a heads up, is it's all or nothing. It either works or it doesn't. It does have great resilience, and there's lots of duplication of assets to make sure that you have a high availability. But your ability to struggle on through a signal failure is much reduced with a modern signalling system.
Okay, Commissioner Fragadakis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So Presto service complaint levels, I'm wondering, did we get, do we get, can we get an update on that?
Sorry, Commissioner, Presto service complaint levels. You want to see how many complaints are we getting about Presto? We don't have that to hand, but we can get that for you.
Okay, great. So my next question is, I noticed that there were 4.69 million customer journeys taken using the Presto Fare Card in February, which is 3.06 million, or 188% more than the 1.63 million journeys taken during February 2016. So I was just wondering if this should give us comfort that our customers are taking to Presto, or are there other factors at play?
No, people are taking to Presto. We've overtaken the GTA properties. We're now the biggest Presto user in the GTA. So we surpassed the 1 million taps a week mark some time ago, and that rise I see it will be exponential as people progressively migrate to Presto, and of course that will be accelerated once we begin to phase out tokens, tickets, transfers, and migrate legacy products such as Metro Pass onto Presto. So I expect that to increase.
Great. So on the Presto cards again, seniors have contacted me complaining that they have to go to Davisville Station to get those in person to register for the seniors discount. And I understand that there are preloaded seniors cards sold at a few Gateway stores. However, I'm not sure how many seniors know of that option. And I was wondering, why can't we have Gateways, at every Gateway, sell these preloaded cards?
It sounds like we've got a bit more to do on comms then, because it's actually all Gateway locations, and in addition to Davisville and Union Station. So there are actually quite a number of outlets where seniors can get preloaded, pre-chipped senior cards. So we'll make sure that we reiterate that. Metrolinx are also, Presto, imminently going to announce the retail network that will be selling Presto cards in the city. So it will be very, very easy to not only buy regular Presto cards, but also discounted Presto cards across the city. I can't say who that is yet, but Metrolinx will be announcing that very shortly.
That was my next question, was wondering if we were going to be restarting the Presto pop-up location program, and I guess
Sure.
by your answer, yes.
So we have been doing the pop-ups, and it's something that we regularly talk to Presto about. But the real solution is to get a citywide, very dense network of retail outlets, and that's about to start happening.
Great. On page 29 and 31, delay minutes and incidents on subway lines, any thoughts on what's driving the increase in passenger-related delays?
Ask Mike and Jim to talk to that.
So we can answer it partially, and then I'd like to perhaps ask Chief Cousins to comment on the unlawful element of the actions. We still get large numbers of EAs, emergency alarms. It tends to be at rush hour, and there is a pattern around time and location. So I think the worst area is southbound on Young University between about 8 and 9 in the morning, with people overheating south of probably Lawrence. And so we have 2 or 3 paramedics every morning we pay for, located at key stations, so we can do a faster response. So we may not be able to prevent the alarms being operated. Well, we have our campaign to make people aware of getting off and asking for assistance, but our job is to make sure we minimise those delays. The number of priority ones remains stubbornly and sadly too high, but we
Mike, just explain priority one for
Sorry, people who are killed at track level.
Yeah, I figured that.
Yeah, sorry, that's the term we use. And we are seeing an increase in trespass at track level. And that's just either people under the influence or running away from the police or going down for a bet or filming a Pokemon video or something else. Jim, did you want to add to that?
The biggest increases that we have seen are in emergency alarm activations. They remain steady, although the last 4 periods, the last 4 periods on the YUS have steadily decreased. Blue Danforth, unfortunately, is going the other way. And as Mike noted, the unauthorized at track level is in the hundreds of % difference between 2014, our baseline year, and most recently in 2017. They are dramatically increasing.
Just a follow-up question on the slideshow, Mr. Palmer, that you showed us. You said that customer assaults are way up. So are customers assaulting other customers, or are they assaulting staff, or both?
It's
and
generally,
what do you think is driving that?
I think it's generally customer against customer, but perhaps Chief Cousins could answer that one.
I believe the slide indicated a minutes increase, not a crime increase.
I don't have the slide because we didn't get a copy of it, but
Yeah.
okay.
So it's customer assaults is 89 minutes up to 246. So what they're seeing on Subway is when an assault occurs, the amount of response time and the amount of time that it takes to release the train back into service is up over their 2014 target. So
It's not that more people are assaulting each other on the transit system, it's just that the delays are longer as a result of the assaults.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great, thank you for that, and for that clarification.
I'll come back, you're at 6 minutes, so why don't I come back to you for
Okay,
other
I had one last
questions.
question, but that's fine.
Commissioner Hevick.
Excuse me. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to just focus a little bit more on the issue of customer trips. Are we having a deeper dive report on this come forward in the next little while?
So yeah, there is a report coming forward that does a couple of things, talks a little bit more about ridership, but we're also we're bringing forward, at the board's request, a ridership growth strategy in the coming months.
Okay, so ridership growth strategy, but are you going to, as part of that report, be looking at reasons why the ridership is flat?
We will provide the best reasons we can come up with. I mean, there is information in here that suggests that, you know, it's more of a North American-wide phenomenon, not just a City of Toronto phenomenon. In fact, on a North American-wide basis for large transits, we're doing not that bad, even though it is fairly flat.
But you'll be doing a deeper dive looking at things like whether we're promoting, whether we're advertising, whether it's people are shifting over to cycling, especially in the downtown core, whether it's the shortage of vehicles, whether it's the cost of the ride, whether it's the crowding and loading standard, whether it's the weekend closures, whether it's counting equipment, and whether we have adequate counting equipment.
So,
those are things that I think need to be kind of looked at more deeply.
sure. So all those kind of things we will look at and have looked at, and when we come and talk about the ridership growth strategy, some of that will be to address many of those very issues.
And and then the other half of the piece, the report, and when is that due, by the way?
I think it's by the fall for sure, but I don't have the exact date. I have to check. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's good. In the papers and on that great source of information, Twitter, there's been a lot of talk on fare integration, or there's been some talk on fare integration, and Metrolinx undertaking some studies on fare by distance. That, frankly, I think includes us. I'm wondering do you have any update that you can provide this commission on that piece?
It's a shame Chris isn't here, because Chris Upfold, and for that matter Arthur Borkwood, who's his sort of lead person on this, neither of them are here today, unfortunately. So we are discussing in very early days with the city and Metrolinx. There is this very early discussion around fare integration. For me, and this is our position, the job number one, though, is to get Presto in first, because that's the enabler of a different fare structure or pricing structure or way of assigning capacity to routes. So there's, I think, get Presto in first has got to be the headline, which is what we're focused on. But we're having early discussions with Metrolinx and with our colleagues at the city. We'll keep you posted. I mean, there's really not a lot to say other than it's very early days in that discussion, and we're certainly not committing to anything, and we wouldn't without discussion here.
Right. And you know, I know that different departments and different layers of this complex thing we call the city have different perspectives on what the appropriate way to charge fares is. I guess my question is, and maybe I'll put it in the way of a comment, is we should have a vigorous conversation here and with our passengers if we're going from a system that we have, the system that we have now, before we endorse anything that Metrolinx might want to, frankly, ram down our throats, or that other people in other city divisions might think is the appropriate way to go.
So I fully agree with that. And just to reiterate, my commitment to you is that we wouldn't go anywhere near commitments without having that discussion here. Equally, though, I can't just ignore what the city manager wants to talk about or what Metrolinx wants to talk about, because otherwise, to not be present, I think decisions will be taken in our absence, so we're not going to go there. But it's very early days. I commit that we would come here to get strategic direction from yourselves before we're any way into the detail.
Okay.
As again, job one for me, focus on getting
Yep,
Presto in, then we'll have a discussion about it.
My second question, and I not only appreciate, I celebrate, I'm jumping up and down that the LRVs are coming to St. Clair. My larger question there, though, is are we providing enough service on our streetcar routes to meet demand? Or are we losing our ability to service the demand by virtue of not having enough legacy vehicles and LRVs, noting that some are already bus routes, to basically service the demand in those corridors?
Well, my position would be, and Rick probably wishes to comment as well, there certainly are routes where we are struggling. I mean, King is very, very crowded, particularly during the peak. St. Clair is a very busy route. It's one of the reasons we're going to add capacity. And once we're fully deployed on St. Clair, there will be substantially more capacity up there. But it is a struggle because, and we've previously discussed this at length, the Bombardier deliveries are late. We have 33 streetcars in service. We should have had around 100. And the legacy cars are getting older and older. And as we have looked to do the refurbishments, we have found that some of them really are not fit for being refurbished, so we're having to scrap them. So we substitute with buses, but there does come a point where you don't have sufficient capacity, and that's why we're pushing Bombardier to get on with the delivery.
But are we under capacity?
I don't think we're leaving people behind, but we transport the masses, but we certainly are very focused on getting the new streetcars in and adding buses to our fleet in order that we can add capacity and move the people that we need to.
Okay, we're at 6.5 minutes, so before we go back to Commissioner Fragedakis, anyone who didn't ask questions first time around with questions? Commissioner Fragedakis?
One last question. So I noticed that one of the COTA requests was to ensure the 514 Cherry route is serviced by new low-floor accessible streetcars. And on page 13, it suggests that is underway. So when is conversion to low-floor operation on the 514 expected to be complete?
July of this year, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mihevc with other questions?
Yes, thank you. Just on the public transit tax credit, I remember when that went in, we weren't exactly jumping for joy for that tax credit, because we thought that a wiser expenditure would have been to put that money into, frankly, capital. Is there any indication, or have there been any appeals to basically, now that we do have some capital money from the feds, getting rid of this, frankly, operating subsidy, you might say, to monetize that into more capital from the federal government?
So when the first tax credit was first brought in, you're quite right, we weren't jumping for joy, because we had a ridership growth strategy that said the first thing we want to do is build capacity. So we want to increase bus routes, increase time of day, and then once we had that capacity in place, you'd go back and either get a tax credit or do something with the prices to encourage people to ride. The tax credit was easier to do, so that happened, and we got a big surge from it. So we got something like 700 or maybe even 900,000 passes annually from that, which was 8 to 12 million rides we expect. They've taken that away. We'll see what the impact is. But one thing that seems abundantly clear up to this point in time, that the federal government is adamant and has been, and I have seen no softening of it, that they will not and have not ever provided operating subsidy in any way, shape, or form. So I don't know that there's any real possibility or likelihood of that. As far as capital money go, I mean, it was a big stretch for them to give us the PTIF money. And so I think, the PTIF, exhausting the PTIF money in the short term is our best way of maximizing whatever money the federal government's giving to us.
Okay, my last question on the previous page, I think Julie asked this, but, around the same theme. Is now our projection for 2017 538.3 in terms of ridership? Are we conceding 5.5 million rides?
Well, 2 to 5 million of that reduction is our best estimate today, formulaic estimate of what the tax credit, removal of the tax credit might do to us. So we do not know. If we didn't have the tax credit here, we'd be saying right now we're probably $1 million or $2 million below last year, which might be a few million below the target. But I would have been saying to you, it's early and April's looking pretty good, so I wouldn't be preaching doom and gloom just yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, another question from Vice Chair Heisey.
I understand it in renaming the Downsview Station, the TTC's incurred costs. And I recollect from the media it was in the millions of dollars because I guess you'd have to change signage everywhere. I don't know. Could you tell me how much money it was?
It's $800,000.
$800,000.
And you kind of alluded to it, Commissioner. Remember, we would have had to make a change to the signage anyway to add the new stations and the extension. But this makes sense to pretty much do it all at once.
Oh, I see. That reduced the cost because we had
we
had to do re-signing anyway for the whole system.
Would.
That makes me feel better.
We'd have had to change the signs on the rocket trains, on the system maps, on all our various collateral. We'd have had to change anyway. The one thing to flag is, for various reasons, the change will be phased over a period of months, but it will begin to kick in from May the 7th, and the overall cost is $800K.
Yeah, I feel much better about that now. On the PTIFs, just wanted to make sure I've got the right numbers because I'm going to have a comment on this later. It's $660 million federal money on the PTIFs over the next several years. Is that correct?
I apologize.
$660 million.
The PTIF funding
Yes.
we've received from the federal government, it's going to be $660 million.
That's what the TTC received. The city will receive some more, and if we can maximize all that money, so for us, the big issue is can we spend quickly enough to utilize all those dollars.
Okay, and I also just want to remind us, so we could maybe talk about it in a little while, that we've also, the feds have committed to over $600 million towards the Scarborough subway extension. That was their last announced contribution to the subway extension. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
So the total's $1.2 billion?
That's the total for PTIF, and Scarborough is 1.2. We do also get roughly $150 million a year from the federal government in gas taxes too.
So we're up to $1.3 billion from the federal government for transit in Toronto.
For phase one.
Right, I got it. Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Mihevc.
I want to talk about the transit credit.
Okay. Motion to receive the CO's report by...
I have a comment?
Oh, sorry to speak. Go ahead.
Yes. I must say I was extremely disappointed initially when I learned that the federal government was going to cut off the public transit tax credit because it affected my family personally and many people I know. And I thought it was a good public policy idea. I then started to think about, apropos the questions I just asked, how much the federal government has given the City of Toronto for transit, which is an unprecedented amount of funding from the federal government. And I thought maybe we shouldn't complain, that we should be pretty happy with what we've received. So I just wanted to put that on the table as a thought for my fellow commissioners and anyone else who's listening, that the problem with federal funding is they should get credit for what they do. And if we focus on the negative, which is peanuts compared to the positive that we've received, it's a disincentive to get new money from the federal government in the future. So I think we should all thank the federal government for what they've done and try and get over the public federal transit tax credit. That's it.
Other speakers? Sorry about that. Others to speak? Commissioner Mihevc.
Thank you. The only point that I would make, I think this is, we're doing lots of great things, and I do think things, especially on the capital side, and we're excited about the opening of the TYSSE, and we're good on the customer service stuff, and everything's marked. The one area that continues to be a concern for me is this ridership. customer trips and the way it is flatlined. And I really do hope and want to encourage staff to really focus. I know that, and you know, I love Vince dearly, and he makes the point of the relationship between employment and ridership and what's happening around North America, and I get that piece. I really, really get that piece. But I think there's more at play here, and I think doing deeper dives into all the things that need to be looked at, changing patterns of ridership, people living more downtown, counting equipment, weekend shutdowns, crowding and loading standards, whether they need to be amended because people are just saying, I've had enough of being packed in there during the morning peak hours. Maybe it's the cost of the ride. Maybe that 10 cents eventually kind of comes back to haunt you, and maybe we're at that point, and that should inform then our fare strategy, or the cost of the fare strategy. Maybe we need a vigorous campaign around advertising Presto, and the benefits of having that card and using that card, and how we can really get people to make modal shifts away from what they're doing now onto public transit. So I really, that's the piece that concerns me the most. I think strong cities really make cities, not transit authorities, because they're at the end of the day subject to the city at large, but our city will be a great city if we start to see people shifting over in larger numbers onto public transit. And that, to me, is the challenge that I see before us.
Thank you. Other speakers? Commissioner DeMaymaker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to echo what Commissioner Heisey was saying about sometimes it is very important and very good and very wise counsel to recognize governments or people when they actually do very good things. I, again, was on the commission many years ago when the tax credit first came out, and I think, without speaking for staff, but if my memory is correct, I think staff and many commissioners didn't actually support the tax credit. It was seen as a very inefficient way to allocate public monies, because we had a large pool of people already using the Metro Pass who then got an extra discount or reward for using public transit, but those people kept all that money in their pocket. None of it came back to the TTC really in any form. The only benefit to the TTC technically would be a bump up in the number of passengers we would get, but as we know, every time we bump up the number of passengers, we actually lose more money and have more financial pressures. So I think if you go back many years ago to when, well, not that many years ago, but when that program was first created, I think many TTC folks and many commissioners would have said that isn't the best way to allocate money. The best way is a direct contribution to transit agencies across Canada, because you get bigger bang for your buck. So for the federal government, I think, to recognize what many people had said in all across this country to them, and not just give a check to the taxpayer, which is politically populist and popular, is probably a very good step. When we look at the allocations, and I guess I'm not sure if we've been briefed exactly how much we think our allocation will be. I keep hearing in the newspapers maybe $4 billion, maybe $5 billion. $5 billion might include the Scarborough subway of $600 and something million, so you're back down to $4.4 billion. But whatever way you analyze the most recent federal announcement, they have given us, on top of the massive investment they gave us last year of about $800 million. Like we said, we're struggling to spend the money fast enough. They're giving us so much money, it's hard for us to spend it because we haven't been at this level of construction and maintenance for a long time. So for them, on top of that, to build in an allocation for capital of some $4 billion or so dollars is phenomenal. I think the statistics, like they say, as we bring all of our technology and all of our electrical systems up from their 30-year-old technology to the most recent technology, we will see all of these performance measures increase. That will reward the people who take the system every day and get very frustrated when maybe 2 times in a week, maybe even 3 times in a week, they get stuck on a subway, or certainly out in Scarborough, the old SRT that kept breaking down. For them to have a more pleasant ride into the city or wherever they're going is probably the biggest reward that we can give them, probably more important in the long term than the financial tax credit, which I'm sure many people did enjoy, because it does feel good to see that in your taxes, because every little bit helps. But I think this is the stars certainly are aligning. We'll have to see what the provincial government does perhaps in a week or so from now. I think we have a city council now that was prepared and stepped up to the plate with the road tolls. I think it was a virtually unanimous motion to say we are willing to put tolls on highways in order to pay for transit. That's now been taken off the table. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what we do. And now that tool, that very effective tool, has been taken from us. But as we look at these reports in the future, I think this is a good time to be on the commission, because it is a time of expansion and growth. And I'm glad we're here this decade and not a decade or 2 decades ago, because I'm sure actually Councillor Cole's father, Mike Cole, could have told you there were times when commissioners were raising fares and cutting back service at the same time, which was not a very pleasant place to be in. So I look forward to us marching forward and giving better service to the public, and we'll wait and see what happens. But certainly I look forward to us as a commission working with Toronto Council on how to allocate billions and billions of dollars of new investment across the City of Toronto. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Motion to receive the report by Commissioner Lalonde. All in favor? That carries. We move to item number 2, which is the ACAT minutes. And if the ACAT Chair Gillespie could just maybe introduce those minutes for us, that would be appreciated.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
First, I would like to thank the ACAT Vice Chair Raymond Delera, who presented these minutes in my absence last month while I was receiving my new guide dog, Crete. The Design Review Subcommittee has elected their new chair in this month, Craig Nichol, and they were provided an update on the Presto Fairgate accessibility installation. And an example of that, I'd like to get to the concrete, is that there's a test lower height Presto installation at the Wilson subway station, and allows those who are in mobility devices or use mobility devices to reach the Presto machine in a more comfortable height. There's other instances of accessibility of the Presto Fairgates, but I won't go into them here. If anyone wishes to know more about it, do feel free to come and we'll speak about it. The Design Review Subcommittee also reviewed a mock-up of the new Presto Fair Media vending device, including all of its parts and labeling, and that allows members to actually get a sense of how it's working, what it looks like, and when it's installed in the subway stations. There are some hardware and audio jack placement that are still under development at this time, and we'll report back to you further as new developments occur. The Communications Subcommittee, new chair was elected. Her name is Margaret Hagman. They received an update. They worked on the new streetcar education video update, and they're working closely with TTC staff on this item. They've also stressed the harmonization and consistency of descriptions of the Wheel-Trans stops at the subway stations and those found on the Wheel-Trans listings. And that's very important for customers to know they're being dropped off and picked up in the right locations, and it saves breakdowns in literally communication along the way. The Wheel-Trans Operations Subcommittee also has a new chair in Lynn McCormick. They have participated greatly. They're a key strategy to the rollout of the family of services, and including what's going on now with the Wheel-Trans presentation rollout panels taking place across the city. They've participated in the operator training for the sedans and taxis, and worked closely with staff on the rollout of the family services information packages. The Service Planning Subcommittee did not elect a chair at their meeting, but they have been they're working on the on the subway transformation program, and we'll have more to talk about following the next meeting. Thank you for allowing me to present the ACAT highlights for February.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Any questions of staff or a motion to receive the minutes? Motion moved to receive by Commissioner Fragedakis. All in favor? No opposed. That carries. Thank you. On to item number 5, which I think we touched on a bit in the CO's report, so I don't know if Commissioner Mihevik still has his question about kind of progress and timelines with TYSSE and the fact there are trains in there being tested and running and how great progress is. Do you have a question?
That's been the biggest setup question.
I know.
Well, my question really is to the CEO. There was a lot of activity on social media related to a test vehicle that ran through the tracks, ran along the new section of the TYSSE, and I'm just wondering if you could give an oral update on where things are at and how we're looking to have the job completed in all its facets by the end of the year.
Well, just one quick headline, and I'm going to ask Mike to comment. The TYSSE remains on target for opening with ATC signaling, Wi-Fi and Presto by the end of this year. And 3 of the stations, as I mentioned earlier, have now got substantial performance. One of the reasons we brought Mike in is because Mike has previous experience of commissioning subways and testing, commissioning and trial ops on subways, so he's pretty much an expert in his field. And I'll ask Mike to just headline what's been going on up there.
Thanks, Andy. Commissioner, I think it's very timely, actually, that we talk about some of the successes as this dream comes close to reality. Last month, we put an old H4 work car up there, diesel-generated, diesel-powered, as the first vehicle, as the sacrificial lamb, if you like, just in case something wasn't quite right. And that passed with flying colours. We then put a different work car up on power for the first time. So the trains are now moving around on power at 600 volts DC. And of course, they're scraping the rails nicely for us to get all the rust off. So all the power is now energised. 2 weeks ago, we put our first Toronto rocket up there. So that has now traversed the whole of the TYSSE, and that's been just doing gauging. So before we put these trains up, we used some technology called LIDAR, where we did laser measurements of the tunnels. And then the later trains have had foam packed around the outside, and then we check the foam for any damage to it, just to make sure that, you know, it's been installed as planned. So we're now in the Toronto rocket testing phase. We have power, we have ventilation. A lot of it is controlled locally, not from transit control. And then the other big milestone for us really now is this coming weekend, we start ATC testing up there. So at the moment, on the TYSSE section, we are at 99.74% installation. And this weekend, we have one train at slow speed starting to do the first low-level tests of automatic train control up there. I think the next milestone, actually, for you and others to see will be in May during open doors, where 2 stations are open, and we're going to have rockets, or we hope to have rockets in the platform, just so people can actually see that it is connected up and they are genuine trains and it's not some sort of mirage. We're very excited. We get handed over the TYSSE in September-ish with the signalling fully functioning in automatic train control. And then we start doing our acceptance testing of all the assets individually and then collectively. And then we roll into a period of system proving just to make sure everything does what it says on the tin. And then we go into a period of trial operations. So we may ask you to come and help, being a unruly customer or something. And that's where we test our people, our processes and our training to make sure that we can actually operate the TYSSE in normal, abnormal, degraded and emergency modes. And then with an opening probably in December of this year as promised.
Great.
You might want to just tell us when that open doors is as well. This is the first I've frankly heard of it. I think
May the 27th, Commissioner. Citywide, a whole bunch of places being opened across the city. We will participate, as we previously had. If you recall, last year, I think Leslie Barnes was the venue. This year will be York University and Downsview Park, public areas, May the 27th.
Great, thank you very much. I look forward to being an unruly customer.
With that, I'll move that we adopt the actions taken in camera. All in favor? Thanks for that. On to item number 8, and we do have a deputant there. So why don't we, is Alan Ewell here? Huh. Should check on him. Make sure everything's okay. Okay, so we don't have a deputant for number 8. So are there questions of staff from commissioners? The item in front of us is the Toronto Coach Terminal and associated recommendations. No, to speak? To move the staff recommendations, Commissioner Byers. All in favor? That carries, thank you. Item number 9, we do have a deputant, and I know she is here. And it is Emily Digg, and she will speak on the 2017 Accessibility Plan status update.
Hey everyone.
Go ahead.
I know I'm in a weird spot, and excuse me for my hack coughing. I'm getting over pneumonia. I have one little problem with this accessibility update. It's the fact that you guys have given up on the tactile signage at bus bays. I've deputated before on this a long time ago. And what I was going to say is, I know we've probably cost prohibitive, but if Halifax Metro Transit can do it, and this is as of 4.5 years ago at their Dartmouth bus terminal and down in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, if they can do tactile wayfinding, and on each pole there's the pole number, and there's a map inside the terminal that's not only large print, but it has braille, and it has where each bus stops, so each bus routes are corresponding with a pole number. And the pole numbers have braille, and there's wayfinding to the poles. I mean, we don't have to get that in depth, but even having a square of tactile at where the buses are going to stop at the terminals. I've seen visually impaired people get completely befuddled and mixed up at Kipling hundreds of times. Balance for Blind Adults used to be over there, near there. Used to take the 30 Lambton or the 50 Burnthorpe from Islington. If we give up on this now, this is a huge thing for people with visual impairments. Some people with visual impairments are also learning disabled and have very low sense of navigation. Some people, I'm not saying all, because it's not nearly all. And also being that we want to have the Wheel-Trans 10-year strategy of the family of services, this would be another boon. My other issue is that even today, I was on 7 buses today, and out of the 7 buses, only 1 driver bothered to get up and do the seat. Only that same driver, in fact I've had her many times, was the only driver that even asked me if I needed to be buckled in. And she's an older driver. She's been around a long time. I've been getting her for years, now and again. But these 2 things, the accessibility plan, it needs to be a little more robust, a little more thought out. I thank you for all the stuff that has happened as a daily user of the conventional, but there are still things that are needed to be done. And I actually today came through St. Clair West. I love the elevators. The only issue, where's the wayfinding signage that's in large tactile print and braille? Same with the elevator at Pape Station and other elevators. Also, some elevator buttons, and I brought it to Andy's attention a while ago, and thank you, Andy, for getting it fixed. But the elevator at St. Andrew, the buttons had no braille whatsoever. So how do you know when you're visually impaired, when there's more than 4 or 5 buttons on an elevator? How do you know which one they're pressing? It comes to the same problem at the new elevator at the Dundas station. the one that's in the parkade. It has a lot of buttons. There's no wayfinding signage in large print or braille, and the TTC buttons are so far down that unless you're in a manual wheelchair, they're very difficult for me, as somebody in a larger wheelchair, to reach and feel the braille. So it would be really great. I know we're trying hard and we have a long way to go, but you guys have been doing an amazing job, and I've got to give kudos to Andy and Kirsten and Susan Tanaka and Mr. O'Leary, and I call him Mr. O'Leary because he actually experienced the 121 bus with my husband and I one evening after a community meeting. And I want to thank you especially, Andy, for getting the 514. And I apologize for beating people's heads up with emails when the 514s are not accessible, or about the whole issue that we don't have our streetcar before 7 a.m. weekdays, before 10 a.m. weekends, and after 10 p.m. weekdays and weekends. And I want to thank you for the elevators and everything. But the one tactile signage you've given up on, the tactile wayfinding at the bus, at the different stations for the bus stops. And that's a major thing.
Can I just ask you to wrap up here at about
Done.
5.5? Wow.
I just want to say thank you, and I want to just finish, and I'm sorry for the way I sound today. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Any questions? No questions. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the item in front of us, which is the accessibility plan. Questions for staff. Quiet group. To speak. To move the staff recommendation, Vice Chair Heisey. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Item number 10, 2016 TTC Transit Enforcement Annual Report. Questions. We'll start with Vice Chair Heisey.
So my question, I was quite intrigued by the large number of category of offenses where we'd laid charges. I was surprised by that. One thing I didn't see that I was interested in, and I would like a response if I could have one, which is it was some advice to the board that our constabulary were going to get the power to lay charges under the Provincial Offences Act, parking tickets, that kind of thing, direct traffic. I heard that discussion. I didn't see anything like that in the stats for charges, and I was wondering if we haven't started that, when are we going to start it, and when can we expect to see some results from our people working alongside the Toronto Police Service on traffic and parking issues?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Heisey, this is a 2016 report, so things were still in discussions at the time that this report would have ended. Formally enacted by City Council on March 9th, gave us the authority to tag and tow vehicles. We anticipate that by Q3, we will have the day and a half of training set up and completed with the Toronto Police Service Parking Enforcement Unit, which is a requirement in order for us to get that. So that would be Q3. I just met with Chief Saunders and Deputy Chief Raymer 2 weeks ago regarding the Highway Traffic Act discussion that we've had. We have permission for it. We have agreement in principle for it. The Toronto Police Service is still working on tweaking a memorandum of understanding for how that will actually come to fruition. We had hoped to combine both those training sessions, but based on the delay for the Highway Traffic Act, we're going to just move forward with the tag and tow piece. And so when you see the 2017 annual report, it's very likely that you'll see some statistics that you were looking for in the 2016.
Could you remind me what the Highway Traffic Act piece is, as you understand it?
It's merely to direct traffic, simply put.
Okay. Other question, Commissioner Byers?
Thank you, and thank you for the report. In CEO's report on page 18, and we get our regular stats on assaults against customers and assaults against operators. And I must say, I found both are disturbing, but the assaults against operators are trending up, and that's a kind of a unsettling thing, both are. Would you be good enough, and don't worry about the data, can you give us your sense on both of these areas from the perspective of transit enforcement? There's some of it in your report, what you're seeing and both against customers and operators and what the future looks like, and can we get get those trend lines going down a little more?
Sure. So through you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Byers, in those two categories, I'll start with crimes against customers. So I've seen a positive impact to our directed enforcement since we started doing statistical analysis for where crimes are occurring, time of day, day of week, things of that nature. As you can see, it's green again this month. I think we're headed in the right direction for crimes against customers. And of course, we do fluctuate just like the city fluctuates because we are a cross-section of the communities that we serve. So when we see assaults go up citywide, we typically see assaults go up TTC-wide. The other issue is 2016 we had a lot of vacancies, and based on the support of the board and others, we were able to fill those vacancies, and beginning this year we only currently have 5 vacancies. So as we increase that, we know that that's going to improve things. We know that through the station's transformation program and getting collectors out of the booth and creating customer service agents, that's going to add to that visibility. And as the board well knows, visibility is one of the greatest assets we have to prevent not only crime but terrorist type activity. So I'm fairly confident that we're going to continue to see improvements with crimes against customers, with the caveat that we are a cross-section of the community, and if it goes up community-wide, it's likely to go up. But I think we're doing everything we can as a commission to address that. The second category, which is crimes against employees, as you know, in December we did the pilot program we called Bus Stop, bringing uniform support to surface transportation operating personnel. We found that to be successful, and so we started phase 2 in February of this year. We've been seeing a great response from our members that operate surface vehicles. And one of the biggest bangs that we're getting for our bucks there is what we call safety talks. And so we're looking for opportunities to provide operators with better information and better resources to become more safe and more successful. And so the way to de-escalate a conversation that may result as a fair dispute type issue, we're making operators more successful and taking away our portion of that sort of two-way discussion. So we think that Bus Stop's going to continue to be an improvement. We've seen a vast reduction, although it is up this period, but it's certainly, I think, going to head towards a better trend line. And again, with our staffing being up, and we're going to come back and ask for more this year. It's all about visibility and being able to be as many places as possible.
Commissioner Lalonde, then Mihevik.
Yeah, I saw the stats in the report concerning theft of service, but I didn't see any stats on what that represented in terms of percentages. Do you folks keep those stats in terms of the percentage of transit riders we have that are not paying a fare? And is that something that we can monitor over time?
Yeah, so as a reminder to the board, I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, as a reminder to the board, this is the report that the Toronto Police Services Board requests. It's a very specific template, it's a very focused report, and it has nothing to do with fare inspection by transit fare inspectors. What we're going to do moving forward is we're going to provide the board with 2 reports annually. There'll be this report, which is required under the Special Constable Agreement to go to the Police Services Board, and a much broader report that will speak to that. So to answer your question, yes, we do have that data, but it's not in this report, but it's certainly available. And we do weekly proof of payment, fare evasion stats for streetcar. We do that every single week, and we monitor it over time. Just for the information of the board, as of March 18th, this year to date, we're at a 2.3% fare evasion rate on streetcar. Industry standard's 2%, and we're at a 4.3% inspection rate, and the industry standard is between 4% and 5%. So we're getting very close. As you'll recall, I told the board we thought we should stop at 80 fair inspectors because we thought that that would put us in that 4 to 5%. So far, that's playing out just as we had planned. So things are looking good, and we certainly have that data available, and will make it available to you.
Commissioner Mihevc had a question.
Sorry, I'm just absorbing the last part because that was one of my questions. I don't see any stats here, and maybe it's because you don't do the fare evasion piece?
So this is focused on special constables only. And so special constables can and do sometimes do fare evasion type stuff, but it's mostly focused on calls for service for crimes. When we do the combined report that'll have the fare inspection piece, you'll see very significant numbers around fare enforcement and fare inspection. And that's mostly from our fare inspectors, which again does not fit the template of this report.
Okay, so that's going to be another report that'll come at a later point?
That's correct.
Okay, so and here, would there be any data here that would kind of link it? For example, fare inspectors had required the support of the transit officers 500 times over the last year, kind of thing? I was trying to see if there's any category into which that would fit.
No, you wouldn't be able to look at this data and be able to tell, because if you saw on here that a fare evasion issue was dealt with by a special constable, there's no way looking at this data whether you'd know if that was a fare inspector that started it or an assistance call for that. So I can't provide you with that information.
Okay, and my last question is around, yes, third party, this is for, I think one of our jobs here is to make sure that if there are complaints against our officers, that they are dealt with transit enforcement unit, that they are dealt with fairly and objectively, and that there's no perception of frankly, people supporting their own kind when an investigation and adjudication is made on appropriate behavior. And so if I read this right, basically we use the Toronto Police as the folks who do that adjudication if there is a serious offense. Is that fair?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mihevc, that is correct. It's basically a two-tiered system. Based on the special constable agreement for our special constables, the Toronto Police Service has right of first refusal on every complaint against a special constable. The second tier to that, if the Toronto Police Service feels it can be handled locally, we have a unit's complaint coordinator assigned to the Human Resources Department of the TTC that has been trained by the Toronto Police Service to intake complaints, to provide the investigation resources, and to ultimately report back to the Toronto Police as to the outcome of that. I would remind the board that the province is currently taking a look at the special constable status throughout the province, that Justice Tulloch has just released a report on oversight for not only police officers, peace officers, and special constables. And you may see a change coming when it comes to oversight. For example, it's possible that special constables could fall under the mandate of the SIU, which they currently don't.
Okay, yes. So basically, if I complain today that I was inappropriately treated by a transit enforcement officer, it would not be you or our people, our TTC people, making the call whether it's minor in nature and therefore a TTC issue, or more serious in nature and therefore a TPA issue, Toronto Police Authority issue.
So we currently have, based on our agreement, we currently have a complaint system that's built into the website, the TTC website, as well as a phone number. If you call that, you're going to get the unit complaints coordinator at the TTC. It's his responsibility to notify the Toronto Police Service that this complaints come in, and through coordination with them, determine who will do the investigation. But no investigation is done on any of my special constables unless the Toronto Police Service has agreed to the way it will be done.
And do you feel that that gives enough, call it distance and objectivity for a fair adjudication to occur?
Well, I don't think you have much of a choice under the current legislation within the province. I'm hopeful that the new changes that the province is looking at and Justice Tulloch's can really, for once and for all, kind of put everybody on the same level playing field when it comes to oversight. I would support that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fragedakis and then DeBaymaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your report, it says on page 10, there's it's about 6 different types of mischief and different breakouts of like those numbers of incidents, general occurrence. And then on page 13, there's another tab or in this chart of mischief at 205. So is this 205 the sum total of all these other ones? Mischief, well, I guess that's Criminal Code 430, Section 1, and mischief endangering life. And I mean, is that, I don't understand why it's broken out this way. So one is on page 10, and then there's page 13.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, so on page 10, you're asking me what the difference between mischief interference exceeding 5,000, mischief not exceeding?
No, so there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 different kinds of mischief and on page 10. And then on page 13, in that chart, it says mischief as one category. So I'm just wondering, are those 6 the 205 total under mischief, or like, I'm just trying to understand the charts.
So the first chart is what's reported internally and to the Toronto Police Service, and the other chart is regarding internal reports that we receive from like supervisors within the organization.
So they don't necessarily match up?
That's because some of those reports wouldn't necessarily go to the Toronto Police Service.
So there might be, so it could, those amounts could be, it could be, mischief could be actually 205 plus all the ones in the first chart on page 10.
Potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner DeBaymaker.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, I was on the commission when we had really no cameras in the system, and then a few very fuzzy cameras in the system, and now I would say some good quality cameras in the system. It's not specifically, I think, addressed in the report, but are you happy with the number of cameras we have within the TTC system and the resolution of those cameras?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the camera system is quite robust. We have all the critical areas covered and many more areas covered. The video services unit is very supportive of us in everything that we attempt to do, whether it's identifying suspects or reviewing assaults against our own people. The video services unit is about to go to a new level of technology, which includes Wi-Fi download system. I can't speak to it in great detail because that's not my area, but I can tell you that Transit Enforcement Unit is happy with the camera system and happy with the video services unit.
Okay, great. And I'll speak later, but I just do want to mention that watching, I am very upset when I see crimes committed or hear about crimes committed on the TTC, but when they flash the camera image of the alleged assaulter or predator, some of those resolutions I've seen are so good, you can even see if they have pimples or what their tattoo says on the side of their neck. So I'm very glad that we have that quality, but you're saying to me that quality is throughout the whole system now, because it wasn't many years ago. Before, we couldn't even tell somebody's gender. It would just be like a blob moving across the screen. It was so pixelated that you would have to say to yourself, is that a man or is that a woman? You couldn't tell anything about them, but you're saying to us today the resolution on all the camera system is good enough that we know gender, race, height.
All the cameras, or most of the cameras are digitized. It depends if you're talking about a stations camera or a DVR on a bus. There is some different technology throughout the system. Mr. Leary?
If I could, through you, Mr. Chair, one of the things that we're doing is we're looking at what the future camera system will be within the stations. Part of the station transformation process of taking collectors out of the booth and establishing these hubs is to have a camera system throughout. All right, so we're in the process of looking at where we need cameras and where we want to increase cameras. The intent will be someday in the future when a person walks into the station, they'd be like walking into Walmart. You'll see yourself on a big CCTV, and we know that people have a little better behavior when they know they're being monitored. So that's the intent in the future, and we're just working on that now. And Mark will be brought into that process in the near future.
And through Mr. Chair, I remember, again, it was years ago that I think I saw a demonstration at the Young Station where if a suspect gets on from the Scarborough RT and goes down to the subway system and goes out, they say, Kipling, and gets on a bus, that do we have the ability to track that person pretty much the whole system, wherever they may try to go and hide?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we do. And depending on how far you go back regarding that quality, back in the day it was videotape. And so that would be taped over, and it would degrade each time.
That's where I was, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? No? A motion to move staff recommendation, but, sorry, to speak. Sorry, Commissioner Baymaker to start.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move the staff recommendations, and I am, I have to say, very, at one level, happy to see the performance of our officers. When I look at this long list, assault causing bodily harm, disturbance, assaulting operators, 225 assaulting other patrons, mischief, 200, sexual assault, 72, threatening, 106. In this very professional and calm environment that we're in today, I think sometimes we forget just how difficult it can be for our officers to deal with somebody who's just drunk too much and is out there on a Friday night coming home and actually wants to get into a fight. And I've seen it myself on the TTC over the years. There are just some people who want to be belligerent, they want to get into a fight, they want to harass the poor woman sitting across the street from them, they want to call that elderly senior citizen names just because they're high or they're drunk or they have some personal issues. So to see that the number of complaints against our officers, and I think it was a total of, that was the reporting, I think 33. The number, I think, is minuscule compared to the complexity and the volume of people that we deal with and the nature of some of the people that our officers deal with. So I'm very glad to see that. I'd always be happier to see it come down. And I think perhaps, and we've had the briefings in the past, that it's not so much a confrontational approach that our officers take. It's one recognizing that when they approach somebody, they're either pumped up because they've been to a Maple Leafs hockey game and they've been yelling and screaming for 2 hours and they're finding it hard to settle down when they get into the subway system. There's a whole long list of reasons why people behave inappropriately, but I'm glad to see, according to this, our officers are doing a very good job. I am, like I just mentioned in my questioning, very happy to see how we are protecting our residents. I am one of those people who believe that cameras do deter crime. I cannot prevent crime. If somebody wants to go and beat somebody else up or start a fight on a subway platform, there's nothing you can do perhaps to stop some people. But I think most of us, when we walk into Walmart, we see our picture on a screen, do tend to behave better when there's a spotlight on us. But when they don't, I feel good that, again, compared to, call it a decade ago, when we had our first, and I think you're right, video cameras that taped over each other, we could not identify the suspects. We would see a blob, I will call it a Sasquatch, that walked out of our subway system. We couldn't determine height, weight, gender, color, nothing. It was just a blob and a grainy blob walked out of the subway station. Now you can identify those people, and I'll say to my partner, if I'm watching the TV and see one of those images come on, and I'll just say, that guy's busted. The image is released this afternoon. By tomorrow morning, they'll have that guy. Because if it was one of my friends or one of my relatives, they would be instantly recognizable. So I think the technology is helping us. I think the training is helping us. And I think it is a very important responsibility that we have as millions of people go through our transit system to make sure they get to work safely and comfortably. And I'm very happy to see that we're doing that in this report. And I encourage our staff to continue with the technology and the changes to make sure that we identify people, and even in the placement of the cameras, that we don't just capture a shot of their baseball caps from 8 feet in the air, because all you can say is, well, we think it might be a male, and we know he's wearing a Toronto Blue Jays cap. We know nothing beyond that. So I'm glad to see that technology is changing, our placement of cameras is improving, the quality of the images is improving, and I think this is good for our customers. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Other speakers? Okay, so I'll move the staff recommendations to receive the report and to forward it to the Toronto Police Services Board. All in favor? No opposed, that carries, thank you. Item number 11 is a notice of motion from Vice Chair Heisey, a joint meeting between the TTC and Metrolinx boards. I don't think there'll be questions of staff, so I'll just let Vice Chair Heisey kick it off.
So it's hard to remember, it was a year ago that we had our last actual meeting with Metrolinx. And we haven't talked to each other again. And even if we agree to a meeting, it won't be for 3 months from now. And it's not like we don't have things to talk about. Fare integration, Presto, Eglinton Crosstown, which we are having delivered by Metrolinx, which we will be operating. And then I add Smart Track. What's our role? What's the system interaction? What's the planning that we should be involved in Smart Track? And I don't know what we should talk about, but I know that there are things that we have to talk about. And people have been telling me about fare integration, that there's these conversations ongoing. It's great that staff are on top of them. I'm sure Chris is doing a great job for us. But that's something that's at such a fundamental level that I think we can't avoid that discussion, and we should have it earlier rather than later. So my suggestion is we move a motion today asking to set up a regular scheduled 2 or 3 joint TTC Metrolinx board meetings every year in the next year, let's say, that you don't have to have the meeting if you can't find agenda items, that perhaps each of the board members here offers some suggestions that could be forwarded on to Metrolinx as the subject matter of discussions for the joint board meeting. And by the way, I went to a meeting of the Toronto Railway Club, of which I am a member, a month ago, and I learned some astonishing things about the Eglinton Crosstown operation, which I did not know. One was that Metrolinx, the TTC, is not operating the streetcar yard for the Eglinton Crosstown. It's been contracted out. I also learned that the company that is delivering the Eglinton Crosstown would like to operate the Eglinton Crosstown because they're responsible for its performance achievement, even though we're operating it, which struck me as rather interesting. Now, I don't know what you do with that information, but that's the sort of thing we could learn as a board if we had a conversation with Metrolinx and we could figure out what that meant, if anything. But I think it means something. So my motion is that we have Chair Cole write to the board of Metrolinx and say that we would like to set up 3 meetings in the next year for joint board meetings to discuss matters of mutual concern and interest. And that's it. I think it's very important. I hear there's some concern about the fact that they have an interim CEO, Mr. Jensen now, not a permanent one, but we had Mr. McQuaig the last 11 months, and we didn't have a second meeting, which we talked about during the meeting last April, like it would happen again. So I think personally, I think we need to push a little to, and it's not, I'm sure I thought it was a very friendly meeting last time, very productive, and I think we should offer to host the next meeting. So that's sort of my general suggestion, and I look forward to my colleagues' thoughts on it.
Why don't we treat it as questions of the mover to start? And so I saw a hand de Laurentiis, then Mihevik.
So it's not quite a question, it's kind of a comment, but I'll put it as a question, Alan. Yes. It seems to me that since there are so many issues where our interests intersect, and more than that, we're kind of, in some levels we're advisors to each other, and in other levels we're actually providers to each other, we're customers of each other. So I really like the idea, and we can call it an information exchange, rather than a formal meeting, if that somehow creates a sense of obligation that the other board may not want to meet. So I'm fully supportive of the idea. I think the kind of information you're gathering accidentally, shall we say, is the sort of information that actually should come in a deliberate way. And then and there's probably information that we can impart that would be useful to them. So I think it's a great idea, isn't it? That's my question.
Yes.
Yes.
Great clarification of the motion. Commissioner Mihevik.
Yes, just Vice Chair Heisey, how would you see the agenda being formed?
I don't know, I just gave 4 topics. I think an information meeting about Crosstown, where both boards were briefed about how it is going to be operated, who's going to do what. The operating agreement, which I don't think most of the board members here have seen. When I asked for it initially, I was told I couldn't see it because it was confidential, which I thought was kind of intriguing. So I think that's a number 1 topic I can think of.
Crosstown,
And then Crosstown, so Crosstown, Presto, a joint board update perhaps, our future role, whatever that there might be. And fair integration, the big one. Even if you didn't discuss the specifics of fair integration, could you discuss the question of issues around how fairs could be structured within the city of Toronto? Because we can't avoid the discussion, it's coming. And if we don't get in front of it, you could have something happen you don't like. It may happen anyway.
Would a way to do it be to forward our ideas to the chair, and the chair, in cooperation with the CEO, put together an agenda with counterparts on the Metrolink side?
I'm fine. I think we need to tell them what we want to do and give them, I would even ask Chair Cole to give them dates for 2 meetings in the next 12 months based on our board schedule and their board schedule, and hope they take us up on it. That's what I'd do. Bring a horse.
You have, Commissioner Byers has a question for you.
Yes, question, Vice Chair. One additional topic could be accessibility,
Sure.
For that joint meeting. I think it's a great advantage for us to have this meeting. The Eglinton Crosstown is an important one. One element of that could be their working relationship with Infrastructure Ontario. We've just initiated a process to potentially work with them, understanding how that's gone. Can tunnel risk be transferred? All these kinds of things. In fact, I think it would be great to have Infrastructure Ontario meet with this board too to talk about how these projects are done. So I don't know, Vice Chair Heisey, whether you agree with that is my question, but other suggestions for you.
Yes. I'd also add to
A lot of
that.
agreeing.
You got me thinking. Another one was the idea.
Just hold on, let's see if
Yes,
you have
sir.
other questions for you. I thought I saw, no? Okay, well, I'm not sure how to procedurally let you go on your next little, okay. Yeah, so the motion is written, I think, are you fine with that? I mean, I think we understand.
I'd like it to be a little more specific so that our board has asserted a desire for 2 specific meetings in the next 12 months. And that we ask the chair to provide possible topics for agendas.
So could we just, I mean, unless you want to just scratch that out right now, move this, and I obviously understand that's the direction you want to go, and just add to that the same way you can invite someone over to your house,
Yeah.
you have to have someone who accepts that invitation. So we can move a lot of things here today, but we don't necessarily have a dance partner on agenda, timing, location, all those things. So just as a caveat, but
I'm suggesting
I
that-
clearly see, and I appreciate your persistence on this, what our ask of them will be, and to kind of set those meetings in place.
I'm suggesting we invite them to dinner, we tell them the menu, and we tell them the day we'd like them to come. If they can't, they can offer an alternative date, an alternative agenda, but if you go forward with a positive proposal that's productive and attempting to be conciliatory, I think that dinner invitations are often accepted.
Exactly. Why don't others to speak on this item? maybe I'll just speak quickly, say, so I've already reached out to the chair of Metrolinx. They seem amenable. They do have the issue of having not a CEO, a permanent CEO in place, and so they mentioned that as maybe a timing issue. Having said that, where we are kind of in the calendar schedule and how long these things take to get set up, they'll probably have a CEO by the time our collective bodies can agree on a date and an agenda. So I don't see that as being an impediment, but I've already reached out, and I take your point to, and I think there was some agreement upon it when we had our last meeting that we would try and make this a regular thing. I think there's also agreement that we'd like to narrow the focus of the agenda, and that some of these are such massive issues that even one or two of them could easily keep us kind of well-nourished at our dinner party. Commissioner Mihevc to speak.
Well, likewise, and my only suggestion is that if we do have ideas, it's not rocket science anyway. I think Commissioner Heisey has identified them. There might be one or two others. For example, I would put Finch LRT on the list because they're all set to go to market if it's not already out at. Is it out tomorrow? Well, I just don't know. So getting an update on Finch and Shepherd LRT would be two other items for the agenda. But if there are any other ones that we think of, that we forward them to you, and then you can kind of take that under advisement for setting the agenda.
Great. Other speakers? So the motion, Vice Chair Heisey will move the motion that's laid out on the page in front of us. All in favor? That carries. I believe that is our final item. A motion to adjourn by Commissioner De Laurentiis. All in favor? Thank you very much, everyone.